our second quarter. Welcome to our second quarter Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Access meeting. The committee is chaired by Jay Williams. Jay, if you want to say a welcome, and then also I'll pass over to Wes just to welcome us for our meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. I was mentioning I'm online off camera, just driving back up from Norwalk. So thank you all again for your leadership and your work. Good to see everyone here. Happy to be here with the staff and the team and co-chair Wes. So thank you all very much.
And nothing really to add to that other than appreciation for the work that goes into it. I know that folks have been putting work in and have a lot of passion around what it is that we're doing. It just makes, I think, this work really more valuable as folks are really invested. So thank you, Anthony, for getting this going, and Jay for the space. Thank you.
Advance the slides. All right, so we have a jam-packed agenda. We have a wonderful group that's doing some work around the public sector working group that we'll hear from, and then we'll hear from our committees. We had a chance to meet over the last few month and a half or so, and then provide an update. And then we'll hear from Tujen, who's done some amazing work, economic mobility and family well-being. And then I'll go over our marketing campaign, which is the second phase of our U campaign and where we are now. And then we'll hear from one of my colleagues on the impact that we've had from Career Connect when we first launched. And then our senior policy advisor, Billy Wong, will provide an update on where we are with our legislative priorities and updates. Then we'll close out. So we have a full agenda and with a lot of talented and tremendous work that's being taken place. And I'll kick it over to my colleagues that are spearheading the public sector work. Thank you for advancing the slide. So Alice Pritchard, Chief of Staff at Department of Administrative Services, Matt Hart, the Executive Director for Capital Regional Council of Government, and Mohammed Al-Qadri, Professor and Director at UConn Public School Policy. I'll turn it over to you guys. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Anthony. And our good colleague Elizabeth also has a set of slides, so we'll swap. And while she's doing that, I'll just correct that my title is not Chief of Staff, though I appreciate the promotion, Anthony. But I am at the Department of Administrative Services, serve as the Director of Workforce Development and Strategic Initiatives for Commissioner Gilman. So just make that correction while we're waiting for the slides to come up. Thank you for having us today and for putting us on your agenda. We wanted the opportunity, or asked for the opportunity, to tell you a bit about our Connecticut public sector workforce development effort. And so really appreciate having a few minutes of your time today. So Elizabeth, you want to jump us to the next slide? Thank you. So I just was going to ask our team to do a quick round of introductions so you know who we are before we start talking. And then we wanted to give you a bit of an update on work that we've been doing in whole and in part for more than 2 years, and identify what we hope is an opportunity for collaboration with this important committee. So again, Alice Pritchard, Department of Administrative Services, Director of Workforce Development and Strategic Initiatives. And I'll pass it off to my colleague, Matt.
Thank you so much, Alice. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to see you. I want to thank the co-chairs and Anthony and the other committee members for this opportunity. My name is Matt Hart, and I'm the Executive Director at the Capital Region Council of Governments, and we serve 38 municipalities in the greater Hartford area, located here in our capital region. I'm very pleased to have this opportunity today. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Al-Qadri next. Mohammed.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mohammed Al-Qadri. I am a professor and also the Director of School Public Policy at UConn. Thank you for inviting us to come and talk about this. This is a doubly interesting project for us, we're talking about DEI. We're also talking about workforce development in the public sector specifically, and it's a pleasure to talk about both of these topics. School Public Policy has about 16 full-time faculty and about 20 part-time faculty. Our full-time faculty are doing just exciting and interesting work on many things, from education to economic opportunity to workforce development to other things. Thank you again for inviting us.
And we would be remiss if we didn't let Elizabeth also introduce herself, though Matt and Mohammed and I are going to talk. We would not be saying anything coherent if it was not for her organizing us. So Elizabeth, please
Correct.
introduce yourself, and then Matt can move us into the history discussion.
Hi, thank you all for having us. Elizabeth Sanderson, I'm a principal program manager at CROG. So,
Great, thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, so a little bit about our history. We began this effort back in 2022. This was a collaboration between UConn School of Public Policy, Capital Workforce Partners, our local workforce development agency, and then CROG. And interestingly, at the same time, the National Academy of Public Administration, and Mohammed was a fellow at that time, they were also talking about public sector workforce development, you know, the need to promote that and address it on a national scale, at a statewide scale, regional, local. So we thought, as part of our conversations, it would be interesting to combine all of this together into a summit, a very successful summit, which we conducted in early November of 2022. And some of the folks in attendance today may have attended that. And during the summit, we asked for volunteers if there were folks who would like to continue the conversation. And interestingly, you know, many, if not most people, raised their hand and decided to join us in conversations moving forward. Next slide, please. So this grassroots effort really developed, and we've had a group of folks from state and local government, 40, maybe close to 50 at various points, coming together periodically to talk about workforce development in the public sector and what could we do to promote DEI in Connecticut's public sector at the state level, at the local level. And we decided to form 3 work groups or subcommittees. Next slide, please. So these are the 3 work groups that we formed. The municipal work group, which is co-convened by CROG and the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, CCM, which is the state's municipal league, if you're not familiar with them. And then secondly, a work group to support workforce development in secondary ed, pre-K through 12. And that's been co-convened by Capital Workforce Partners and our State Department of Education. And then last, but certainly not least, a state work group that has been co-convened by UConn School of Public Policy and the State Department of Administrative Services. So I'm just going to spend another moment or two talking about the municipal work group and then turn things over to Mohammed. So we've had a great group of local HR professionals and other folks meeting almost monthly over the last year and a half. And we've had great participation from DAS as well. I'd like to thank Alice and Deputy Commissioner Darren Hobbs and others who have joined us really to focus on building code officials and how can we strengthen that profession. We've now moved on to look at other local government opportunities as well. CCM is really trying to promote municipal careers across the state. They've produced and are producing a really neat video series, which I would encourage you to check out, which is designed to help generate interest in local government careers. And then lastly, before I close, we do see an opportunity here. We do see an opportunity, given the workforce challenges that we're facing with recruitment and retention, to diversify some of these municipal occupations that traditionally have not been that diverse. So that is one silver lining we see in the midst of this challenge we're facing. Thank you again for your time, and I'll turn things over to Mohammed.
Actually, I think Mohammed, am I doing this one and I'm handing it off to you? But you're muted, Mohammed. So I'm gonna talk and then pass it off to you. Okay. So Mohammed's on the screen twice here because we put him in this fabulous picture of the event that was happening back in November of 22.
I was a lot younger then.
Since then, we've been working to, look at what's happened with state employment over the last, 18 months, 2 years, after the significant increase in the retirements. And though the state has actually rehired most of the positions that we had retirements from, there's still a lot of room to improve the diversity of the workforce and the representation of that workforce by comparison to those that we serve within the state. And Mohammed's got some good data to share with you, but we're very interested in how our focus from the state work group might intersect or align with the work of this committee. As we've been talking about wanting to have more than a kind of a number goal for the number of state employees we would have hired, we also want to start to look at and the state has been looking at its diversity goals as well. And so I'll turn it over to Mohammed to just share a little data on that situation today.
So it's really this has been a project that started in 2019 in terms of the data. We started doing some data analysis, and then later on we pivoted to start looking at new hire data, because all we were looking at before was legacy sort of agency representation data. These are so now we look at the overall agency population, each agency, state agency population, and then we look at the people, the composition of the people hired in the last 3 years, and then we compare those to the census. So you've got 3 bars on this chart. One, the gray is the census bar, the orange is the hired in the last 3 years, I think it's orange, and the blue is all current agency employees. So what we did is we looked at all full-time state employees. In this chart, you only have the executive agencies, which make up about 26,682 full-time employees. I think there are about 3,000 or 4,000 additional part-time employees in the mix. It's really interesting. The state hired about 20% of its workforce in the last 3 years alone. So for people who were talking about a retirement tsunami, I think the state has pretty much hired almost all of those positions that retired in the last few years. And again, 20% of a workforce replaced in 3 years is a big deal, especially in a market like the one we're in, employment market like the one we're in now. So as you can see, a consistent story is that we have underrepresentation of Hispanic females and Hispanic males by comparison to their census representation numbers. And we don't have as big an issue with white females, black males, and black females. Let's go to the next slide, because this picture is not really doesn't tell a whole story, because we're mixing in the administrative assistants with the executives. So you're really getting a mix. So if there are 1,000 African American or black women in the workforce, and there are 950 of them are working in administrative assistant positions, they're really mixed in with everybody else, and then that gets watered down. So then what we did is we also looked at salaries, because salaries can tell a story, right? A better story. So what we did here is we compared the salary of every intersected ethnic race and gender group by comparison to white male. So we used white male as the reference population. As a feminist scholars would have a real big issue with that, right? But we did it here for a good cause, I think. So as you can see, white females are paid comparatively well. This is where the state is doing really well. But then when we go to people of color and Hispanics, we are really seeing a substantially lower percent pay for black males, black females, Hispanic males, and Hispanic females. And that is pretty much a consistent story. This is, again, you know, salary is 2/3 of the salary inequity is a result of representation inequity usually. So it's really important to link the two together. And this is sort of a way to zoom in on the representation figures I showed you a little bit earlier. And the next slide is where we looked at non-executive agencies. And as you can see up there, I say not complete because only about 1/3 of the employees in non-executive agencies we have race and ethnicity for. They just somehow don't report that data. They report gender because that's important, I guess, for the retirement system. But they don't report race and ethnicity, although they probably have that data in their own systems. So based on the 1/3 that we had full data for, this is what the picture looks like for all current agency employees in blue, and orange, or orange is the higher than the last 3 years alone. So you can see that side-by-side comparison. No, we don't have data on disability, unfortunately. I see your question, Alan. We don't have data on disability in the system that we have. I don't know if DAS has any data on disability. But unless somebody's asking for accommodation, I doubt that we collect that data.
Correct. I think that's probably right.
And that's basically so the picture looks like we are, it looks here like we are, you know, there's equity between white males and white females, but there's not really, there's an issue with Black male, Black female, Hispanic male, and Hispanic female. And again, that might be tracked back to representation and what we call occupational segregation, or position level segregation, rather. So, you know, people who are engineers make a lot more money than social workers. And if women are concentrated in, or if people of color are concentrated in non-engineer jobs by comparison to engineers, then you're going to see that differential as we go through this. And I think that is my next one is Alice.
So again, we want to thank you all for not just hearing what we've been up to, but also hopefully for starting a potential conversation. Because again, as you're thinking about many of the important workforce populations that we should and are trying to attract, the public sector, we hope, can be on your mind as well, because without a qualified public sector workforce, our communities and the private sector are not going to function optimally. And so really hoping that what we were thinking, and Elizabeth, I think you could drop the slides and we could go to the, Anthony does have the slides, and you'll have our contact information certainly, and would like to talk to you all further. But I did want to suggest that what we were hoping is that we might be able to bring our focus and our data expertise from the University of Connecticut to some of the conversations that you all are having, and join forces and hopefully, you know, kind of elevate this work and accelerate its impact, because we know that it's important, and really wanted to bring it forward. So I'll stop, and maybe Anthony, we should turn it back over to you to see if there are questions and check on our time. And thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you, Alice. Thank you, Mahat, and thank you, Matt. If anyone has any questions, just please feel free to drop it in the chat. I feel like there's an opportunity to have some follow up in the chat. But one of the other things too that was mentioned is that there will be some opportunities to engage with each committee. I'd love to have you guys come meet with our chairs and figure out some next steps and how we can help support it, because we need to build up our public sector in order to support many of our providers and our vulnerable populations. It is a collective team, and I think we have the right leaders that are chairing our committees to help, you know, bring this forward. All right, next slide. But thank you guys. Next presentation back up. Next, I'd like to hear from our committees. If you guys, I know Alice is traveling. If you guys might hope you guys are able to stay on and kind of hear some of the work that's being done from our committee chairs. Next slide, please. Genevieve,
Yes.
Yep, there you
I
go.
am here. Yes, wonderful. So thank you for that wonderful presentation and for the work that you're doing to talk about what's happening in terms of diversity. I think we have to model that work in our own agencies. So I appreciate that report and look forward to what is next. Regarding the BIPOC Subcommittee, we recently wrapped up a job seeker survey where we had about 100 and nearly 160 respondents. And I see some of the folks who really helped to circulate that survey on the call. We use community-based organizations, the community action agencies, help to spread the news and share information about that survey. I see Reba Espera, who is here. We had East Con, so adult education participated in reaching job seekers, as well as United Ways of Connecticut and Greater New Haven. So we really tried to cast a wide net, and we are in the process now of really analyzing what some of that data is reflecting regarding job seekers and what it is that they want. We did find largely that many of our respondents are between the ages of 30 and 40, and so like 30 actually and 50. And so we're looking at individuals that are already working in large, so that our job seekers in Connecticut are, many of them actually, based on this survey anyway, a small swath of respondents, but we're looking at individuals that are already working either part-time or full-time that are still in the job search market. So looking at how we are upskilling individuals will be critical to our strategies, particularly for the BIPOC population. And so we're looking to really, again, take a lot of the information that we have here. This committee will be looking and diving deep into the hard data that's revealed there. Interestingly enough, though this survey was meant specifically for BIPOC, we got a large number of respondents who indicate race as white. So very interesting data. Well, there'll be more to share on that. But again, very appreciative of all the nonprofit organizations, community-based organizations that shared that information with us. So we'll be looking forward to hopefully be able to synthesize that and make some recommendations to our employer partners. Thank you, and happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Genevieve. Next slide, please. Next, I'd like to have Earl.
Yep.
Sure.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. And that was a great presentation on diversity. I definitely would like to connect with you guys, or I'm assuming all of the committee chairs would like to connect with you guys so we can see where their intersectionality lies for all the different committees. In regards to reentry, we've met briefly, but the main focus of the things that we've been working on is an employer toolkit to help in understanding for employers when they're hiring folks through HR, so they have a better understanding when hiring from the reentry population. I was also able to attend the National Reentry Workforce Conference. They actually have a employer toolkit available as well, which I will be bringing to the folks on the committee to view to see how that works and what we might be able to, as I say, copy and steal everything, or what's pertinent and evidentiary based from that particular toolkit, which is a national toolkit for employers from the National Reentry Workforce Conference. The other end of the spectrum around advocacy and policy for the reentry population as it relates to livable wages, some of the barriers that we know that impact this population. There was some work done previously by the legislature and other stakeholders that show that there are over 500 collateral consequences that impact employment viability for the reentry population. So, and looking at some of that work and some of the legislation that have recently passed, we're looking to get focused around campaigns of awareness. There is currently the Clean Slate legislation that was passed in 2021, but was kind of slow walked to be implemented in January 2023. And then unfortunately, it hasn't been fully implemented. It was supposed to then be fully implemented this past January 2024, and it still hasn't. With that legislation, it would automatically expunge it's been estimated anywhere between 80,000 to 120,000 folks in the state of Connecticut, which would make sure when they're doing their background checks that they don't get hit and being told that they can't be employed because of their previous criminal history. So we are working with Connect. I have connected or reached out to work and partner with Connect so we can help our administration get that fully online. There are currently, as you guys know, roughly 100,000 jobs available in the state of Connecticut, and the reentry population is a viable workforce that covers all of the demographics from elderly to youth, juvenile, disabled, veterans. The whole spectrum of demographics are covered in the reentry population. So that's one of the things that we're working on pushing to make sure that the people that are eligible get included and have that mechanism work the way it's supposed to be working to get their record expunged automatically. On another note, I've also partnered with a coalition, which is the CT Pardons Coalition for Absolute Pardons. And we're going to be doing a geographical, multi-geographical simultaneous pardon workshop and clinic during the week of Juneteenth. And that's going to be taking place on June 18th. And we partnered with the community colleges to hold it in 6 different locations throughout the state, and then carry that with workshops throughout the summer to give people a full, fresh start so that they can fully reintegrate back into community and not have to worry about their background checks coming back negatively. So we are working to connect with different partners and stakeholders like the community college system and other stakeholders in the various communities, as well as employers, and hopefully with our connections here on this committee with CBIA, so they can also be an involved stakeholder, so that we can connect these individuals to livable wage employment. And then the last thing I'll add is, in my position as a director of the Mayor's Initiative for Reentry Affairs in Bridgeport, which I am formally resigned in the last month, but prior to that, we were doing a lot of work with individuals and connecting them to the Career Connect CT. And one of the things I found with that system, I believe they're going to be on talking later, is that when we were onboarding, I made it my mission for every individual that came into the department that we onboarded them with Career Connect CT. And what I found is one of the questions that it asks is, which organization is it coming from? And it only limits the organizations to, I guess, the folks who receive the funding from that pot of money, the 17 or so organizations. And I think there's some opportunity there to really bolster the usage of that website if other organizations that are filtering and funneling people into it could be recognized for their work in adding folks to that particular pipeline. And that's where we're at with the reentry subcommittee updates. I'm open to any questions.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Earl, for such a robust update. I appreciate all the work that's being done. Next slide, please. Thank you, Alan. I think you'll be joined by Billy, right?
Yep. Billy's gonna sit down and help us with our report today. First of all, I want to thank you for putting together the meeting, and I want to wish everybody a happy Global Accessibility Awareness Day. I do have a couple of reports. Ellen and Jill completed the integrated resource team training around the state to train partners in the American Job Center, Bureau of Rehab Services, Bureau of Education Services for the Blind, Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, and the Department of Developmental Services on how to leverage resources and blend and braid services. We've also done 3 windmills disability awareness trainings. They were offered to employers. Most attended employers were from the transportation, distribution, and logistics sector. We meet usually on Thursdays. We meet usually at this time. We've had some very robust conversations, and I'm going to ask Billy to jump in and pick it up from here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Alan. Hi, everyone. It's really great to see so many of you actually from the Persons with Disabilities Subcommittee here with us. It's really great to have been having some very, very robust conversations these last several months. As Alan mentioned, we really talked about some of the barriers for persons with disabilities in accessing services. So a lot of that was really the no wrong door work that was completed, the idea of an integrated resource team to provide a higher level of care to persons with disabilities as they're moving through various systems. And really on that, persons with disabilities oftentimes, require specialized care. And we talked about how there are employment navigators out of various state agencies that could be connected with one another. We talked about DEMIS employment navigators, folks at the AJCs that work with JFIS or WIOA programs. We talked at length about BRS counselors and how many people may not be aware of the entire scope of services offered by these counselors. However, we also talked about opportunities to connect with other state agencies, in particular, the Department of Social Services. Oftentimes, there's a health element integrated with this, with federal benefits from SSI, SSDI, Medicaid programs. We talked about programs like MedConnect. So there was really a distinct need to think about bringing the Department of Social Services to the table, and also being able to bring together the State Department of Education, acknowledging that when children with disabilities grow up, there really is a distinct break when a lot of services that were offered during when they were in secondary school, especially with 504 plans and whatnot, really there's a break in that when they age out of the system and then they become adults and then they enter the employment system. Integrating SDE and DSS was really a topic that we discussed. The second topic that was key really is the state as a model employer. So we had a robust discussion about really the same model, which is state as a model employer, developing frameworks for integrating uniform policies across the state for hiring persons with disabilities. Again, this goes back to employer awareness, no wrong doors, as well as windmill trainings that the committee has been advocating for. The third piece to this is to look at the other side of the equation, and the other side of the equation being training a healthcare workforce that would be able to adequately serve persons with disabilities, knowing that oftentimes this workforce, particularly those at entry-level positions, are very low resourced. The salaries are low. There is really high turnover in that space. And OWS is currently really leading a lot of work to develop a direct support professional pipeline, which we call the Human Services Career Pipeline. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the legislative update. But overall, really seeing things from two pieces of the equation, from really the individual side and understanding the barriers that they face, as well as from the employment side, from the healthcare worker side. So a lot of conversations often framed by some of the legislation that was passed. And we look forward to really, moving this work forward, and collecting a lot of these ideas together.
All right, thank you, Alan and Billy. Appreciate it. Next slide, please. Mimi.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see you all and really happy to be here. Before diving into the youth subcommittee, I just wanted to briefly say thank you to the other chairs. We had the opportunity to meet with each other, and I know, we shared with Wes and Jay and Anthony some ideas for, maybe just in terms of process and how we are coming together, some ways that we might look into creating more synergy across committees. So just wanted to, say thank you to Anthony for his work and helping facilitate that, and to Wes and Jay for being open to thinking about this. But, in particular, I feel like I should mention that, we talked about, better inclusion for the DEIA subcommittee work in the strategic plan, really thinking more discussions across committees, and being able to really connect not only with each other in the DEIA, but certainly one of the missing pieces has been, really robust conversations with employers and with people with lived experience as well, and really bringing them together as much as possible. And then really thinking about how we can move forward together rather than in our only in our siloed committees. So just want to put that out there, and I know you guys have been responsive to that, so excited to see what's next. So in terms of the youth subcommittee, and invite any of the other chairs to weigh in there. I know that that has been something that I think we were all really in sync on. So it was a very good meeting. So thank you for that. In terms of the youth subcommittee, we did submit some recommendations for the strategic plan, which we're really looking to get more concrete on what the goals are and integrating that into the state plans, including things like reducing the number of disconnected youth by 50% in 5 years, having 5,000 additional opportunity youth in the next year be served through training and education programs, really setting the goal to have an additional 50,000 youth over the next 5 years connected to training and educational opportunities who are experiencing disconnection. Also facilitating more connection to that public funding, to the federal funding that includes workforce, but being really intentional about carving out training programs for young people so that we can have the workforce that's needed today, but it's going to be needed next year too. And I know that there have been some struggles in really, making sure that that workforce funding is included in things like, infrastructure dollars and, the broadband and things like that. So how are we really diving into some of that so that we're preparing the workforce for the growth industries in healthcare and manufacturing? A great meeting with Paul and IT, finance, transportation, construction. So how are we scaling up to meet the need today and in the future with our young people who are available and wanting to work? So putting that out there, and then just thinking about also like really diving in. We did kind of a preliminary asset plan, asset mapping. Now it's going back about 1.5 years. So we had all this information, but where are our youth employment programs and how are we, able to connect young people, easily to the different opportunities that are out there. And I think that, that is work that's on the table to happen. And I think, some of the recent bills that passed will include that. And then, thinking about also just, young people more holistically and developing systems around them so that we're really connected when a young person needs support, that they don't have to go to 7 different places to get that there is, that kind of navigator function or, kind of case management, if you will, but really just somebody that is going to help with that coordination of all the resources that are available so we can make sure that we're efficient in delivering them. We know there's a housing crisis and, there's a lot of work around that. I come from working at the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness, and, the numbers are very alarming just in the last 5 years. And the last thing I will say, and I know if you know me at all, you've heard me talking about this already, but Billy could probably tell you what I'm about to say. But the data. We need the data. We need to know who our youth that are experiencing disconnection are today. Who are they? We know. We kind of don't. I mean, at the community level, who are they? And do we know if we're making a difference with them from 1 month to the next? And I have to say, I'm so proud of Connecticut. I am the executive director for the National Youth Employment Coalition. That's a national organization, but I'm here in Connecticut. And I talk about Connecticut all the time. There is tremendous work that is happening, you know, a lot because of the DEIA Foundation and the report, but really all of you that have already been working on this, it really, I think, can be a tremendous example to the rest of the country if we do this right and we dig in.
All right, thank you, Mimi. Last but not least, Robin, who chairs Robin or Lewis, I don't think Lewis is here, that chairs the Veterans Committee, to provide an update. If we can be brief, I know it's hard to be brief, but I want to be able to make sure we hear from, you know, Tujen, who's doing some wonderful work. I can always cut back some of the time on my presentation, or I can do that at another time, but I definitely want to make sure we have time for Tujen to present. You're muted, Robin.
Thank you. I will be very brief. I was scanning the participant list for Louis, but he is not here, so you've got me. We have been meeting. We have been mapping out kind of what the transition process looks like currently for veterans, and then mapping out what we think a better transition process would look like, including creating a state TAP or transition assistance class within the DOL. While Connecticut has a lot of positives when it comes to veterans, we have identified quite a few barriers and difficulties that we can work on as a state. And we've been following some legislative bills as well, solutions to this. One of them has to do with transportation, free transportation for veterans or reduced transportation for veterans. Another one is the property taxes. The states around us have very clear property tax relief or exemption based on disability status. In Connecticut, it is town by town. There is a bill, or there was a bill to make that statewide, and I'm not sure where that stands at this moment, but we've been trying to follow that. You know, trying to create a marketing and branding campaign for Connecticut for veterans. We do have a lot going for us, including our whole defense manufacturing industry, a lot of hiring and workforce initiatives, although they're a little bit disjointed right now, kind of bringing them all together. We have had meetings with CBIA and others, so we want to kind of really work on it's creating these connections, right, and creating the relationships. There's also a place for greater connection between the state agencies themselves to create almost a by name list, or at least when we know people are coming back to Connecticut, to connect them really quickly with the veteran service officers so that the employment connection can be made much more quickly and easily than it is right now. Expanding the number of veteran outreach liaisons in the state would be a huge part of that. And then partnering with key employers also so that they're on the lookout for these TAP class participants to, you know, guarantee interviews or reach out or, you know, mentor in some way. So that's kind of where we are in a very, very short abbreviated state.
Thank you, Robin. I know you guys are doing a lot because I think you guys came up with a wonderful like logic model, kind of like change and everything else. And
we did, and one of the things we're looking at is, you know, it was kind of shocking. Connecticut, we have 158,000 veterans in Connecticut, but in 2015 we had 199,000. So we are losing our veteran talent in the state, and we've got to do something to attract more people to want to come back to Connecticut or to stay here.
All right, thank you. All right, next slide, please. Next, I'd like to invite Christina Morales, who's a statewide Tujen coordinator. Christina, I'm sorry that, you know, hopefully you're able to get through your presentation. I don't want to shorthand you, but you have some amazing stuff that's taking place. So hopefully you're able to get through, and if anyone needs to follow up afterhand, her email information, she's able to share that so you guys can actually follow up and actually learn more about, you know, Tujen and all their initiatives.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. I'm not sure. I can't share my screen. Thank you. Okay. Can everybody see my screen? Yes, good. All right, awesome. I got one head nod, so I'm gonna go ahead and proceed. Before I get started, I want to respectfully acknowledge the Pocosset people who have stewarded this land that I'm currently on, presenting with you all through their, all the generations that they have provided for us. And so I just want to respectfully acknowledge the Pocosset people. Again, I am Christina Morales, the statewide 2Gen coordinator for the Connecticut 2Gen initiative out of the Office of Early Childhood. Thank you, Anthony, for this very challenging presentation in the time frame that I've been given to talk about all of the good work. So I'm just going to try and do an overview of 2Gen and talk about some of what we're doing to support families in Connecticut. And so here is our 2Gen initiative. It brings parent and caregivers and child systems and policies together to support whole family towards well-being and economic mobility. There are many communities across the state that have adopted the 2Gen approach. In particular, we are supporting through some funds an organization called Full Circle Empowerment. And they're doing some really powerful stuff out in the Bridgeport, Norwalk area, working with students who are disconnected from education. Marianne, there's an organization out there who's supporting young children in that space, but they're also supporting the adult learners and their infant children. And they're trying to create a childcare facility and where the parents can come into their facilities, drop off their children, get the education and training that they are looking for. And so that's one of many 2Gen communities that are implementing this approach. And so I just wanted to lift that up here. I'm going to take you through a very brief journey through legislation and how 2Gen has been moving in the legislative branches. And so speaking in 2015, the Senate bill established 2Gen. And so that's when we created our initiative and started to make moves on this very important work. And Connecticut became the first state in the nation to pass legislation. We love to be first in all things. And so we were first to codify a bipartisan 2Gen initiative in statute. 2 years later, OEC became our lead agency coordinating agency for the 2Gen initiative, and OEC is on the executive branch. And then in 2019, legislation led to the creation of an interagency plan for family economic success. And that was developed in partnership with the Office of Policy and Management. And in that same legislation, we had 25% of parents who sit on the 2Gen advisory board were earmarked there. And what's great is that we didn't say, hey, become a part of this 2Gen advisory board, volunteer your time. What that legislation states is because you have so much experience and knowledge, we want to compensate you for that time and effort that you're putting in. And I believe Alexis Dwyer is currently in this meeting, and she is one of our 2Gen board members and a parent consultant. And so I just wanted to acknowledge her presence here today. In 2021, we also, the legislation required 2Gen recommendations for the state's workforce strategy. And so we have submitted those some years ago. That was prior to my time here. I've been with the 2Gen initiative for 6 months now. And so we've been able to work on those recommendations. And we currently work with the Office of Workforce Strategies on multiple other strategies that we're implementing. And so I want to take you to the process of parent engagement and why that's so important in our work. And so we seek parent leaders in the community who are involved, motivated, influential in their communities, and have lived experiences accessing government systems and services. We create mutual goals with them. We've identified parents to lead. We collaborate and establish the goals on our 2Gen initiative. We respect and value parent leaders. They are valuable allies, and we want to make sure that they are contributing and we're incorporating their feedback on all of the plans and strategies that we're implementing across the 2Gen initiative. We listen, learn, and respond, and listen to what parents have to say and take time to understand and appreciate their point of view before responding or taking action. We also provide training and support to all of our 2-gen parents who sit on our advisory in our work group, and we provide trainings around the legislative process. We provide training for mentor-mentees. So you see in this picture here, these are the mentors that are now mentoring the parents around how to advocate, how to become parent leaders, how to sit on different subcommittees, such as Alexa's here currently. We also cultivate trust and build a strong and trusting relationship with parent leaders. That's very crucial in our work, and transparency in all of our actions and decisions will go a long way in cultivating that trust with them, especially making sure that we're regularly communicating and providing updates. And so we meet with them almost weekly, and so that's a part of that, our process with them. We recognize and celebrate their successes, and we compensate them. So you saw in the legislation that we're compensating our families for their expertise and their knowledge. And so that's just a little bit about parent engagement and how important that is to the 2-generational initiative and to the approach that we are implementing. And so I wanted to lift up as well that we have our Connecticut models currently. One of them is the Parent Leadership Training Institute that comes out of the Commission on Women, Children, Seniors, Equity, and Opportunity. And I'm actually a graduate of that PLTI Institute in 2011. And I learned there about the legislative process, what that looks like, feels like. We took a visit to the Capitol to see the space and where legislators were there. We learned about how to budget. We did a project that we had to implement and carry out even post-graduation. And so it's an amazing parent leadership opportunity for parents that we have. And their 2-gen approach, they have a Children's Leadership Training Institute that they also offer. And that's how 2-gen is incorporated into that piece. And so the 2-gen advisory board, as I mentioned, we have a legislative 2-gen advisory board inclusive of parents, and their expertise guides the 2-gen's policy and program strategies, which includes addressing benefit cliffs, elevating parent voice across state government, identifying affordable transportation solutions, and program alignment across agencies. And then you'll also see that the Office of Early Childhood has their parent cabinet, and that these are just a few ways 2-gen is represented across different models in Connecticut. Oh, and this lovely picture, you'll see Alexis here. And so I know she's probably like, geez, she got me front and center here. But these are our members of the 2-gen advisory board. And these are very amazing and passionate people across our state. And so I prefaced all of this parent engagement piece just so that everybody can understand that it's really important in the work that we're doing. And if we don't have parent voice and we're trying to make decisions at the table without parent voice, it's going to be hard for us to really move things. And we've noticed in state government that that's how it's been. And so we really want to capitalize on parent voice. And so in this 2-gen structure, you'll see that parents are circled around all of the work that we are doing. And so the executive leadership team has a parent who is represented on that on the executive leadership team. The 2-gen advisory board, I continue to say 25% of our parents are represented there with other private and public stakeholders. Partners are a part of the 2-gen working structure. We can't do this work. I wouldn't be here if Anthony didn't provide me an invitation to talk about the 2-gen initiative. And so partnerships is extremely important. We have the parent engagement chairs and work group. And so the parent engagement chair also has a parent represented on there. And then lastly, our family economic mobility chair and work group also has a parent who is also represented on the chair. And so it's extremely important that all of our work is really centered on parent voice. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the benefit cliffs work that we're doing. And so I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with benefit cliffs and what it is. And so quickly, I'll just refer, it's the sudden and often unexpected decrease in public benefits that can occur with a small increase in earning. And this happens when families receive benefits through public assistance programs, earn a raise, and then become ineligible to continue receiving benefits despite being unable to sustain their household. And so that's a little bit about what benefit cliffs are. And so the work that we're doing, you see this chart here. This is a snippet of a larger chart of workflow that is happening in the Two Generational Initiative. And so the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta has provided a cliff tool that we are working with in dissemination with agencies across the state. And so the goal of the tool is to assist families in making informed decisions when pursuing training and employment opportunities. Also, we're using this tool to educate policymakers and legislators on how existing public benefit structures create cliffs for families and inform policy decisions, improving economic mobility. And so this cliff tool, our goal is to implement the cliff tool with at least 25 agencies across the state. We are currently at about anywhere from 10 to 15, so we still have a little ways to go by June 30th. So if anyone here is interested in learning more about the cliff tools, feel free to reach out and we'll get that going for you. In addition, we have our benefit cliff policy that we continue to work off. We'll talk a little bit about those policies in just a moment. We have the benefit cliff feasibility study, pilot study and cost analysis study that we are working off of. And so we are working with the Office of Workforce Strategies, the Department of Social Service, and the Office of Early Childhood around this study and social finance. And so we're exploring how we can support parents increase their economic mobility by moving over the cliffs with policy changes. And there's so much more in that study. And there's a draft. If anybody is curious to know what's in there, we are happy to share it in that draft form and we would love to receive feedback. We are partnering with CBIA on an employer survey regarding employee advancement. And we've got some data back. We've surveyed about 489 businesses in which we've received data around how the impact of advancement or pay increases has been impacting their employees. And so that's been a really cool journey around that. And then we also work on work group convening. So there's tons of meetings that we are implementing that we are working across to discuss a lot of what I mentioned. All right, so here's our policy work to date. So over the last few years, we've been doing a lot of great stuff. Most recently in 2022-23, TANF time limits increased and asset limits have also increased. And the state EITC increased to 40%, which was originally at 30.5%. We've also increased SNAP income eligibility from 185 to 200%. And so we've been making some slow gains. We continue to raise the earned income tax credit, expand income thresholds in childcare and possibly other programs, expanding and eliminating asset limits. And then we're also some other policies around 2Gen are some rental assistance, earned income disregard for young adults who may be losing housing subsidies and a significant disincentive to economic mobility and some employment opportunities. And so there's a 2-year income disregard for household members between the ages of 18 and 24. And so that's up 200%. And so we're working on some other policy changes, which some of the benefit cliffs study would also lift up. Okay, I'm almost done, y'all. Thank you so much for your patience. We have just a few more slides, so bear with me. We have some information sharing and data that I wanted to just kind of lift up a little bit. So the 2Gen advisory board meetings are open to the public, and those usually happen quarterly and are posted on our website or will be posted on our website. And it just talks about all of the work that's happening in both of those work group areas. And then the 2Gen forums, both the 2Gen advisory board and the forums are usually actually executed out of the Commission of Women, Children, Seniors, and Equity and Opportunity. There have been some education forums on just what is happening with 2Gen and what it looks like across the state. Alexis currently and other parents are planning a parent academy. So it's being designed by parents for parents around workforce development, fatherhood, financial stability, and entrepreneurship are some of the key topics that we'll be covering. That is happening on June 8th, if anyone is interested in that. And they've done that year after year. And finally, we are working with the University of Connecticut to implement a parent evaluation on how 2Gen and the work group and being a part of the advisory board has impacted them. And so we look forward to that continued parent evaluation with UConn, our partners. Lastly, we are working with state agencies on an executive assessment around how their agencies' culture, policies, and programs meet 2Gen principles and practices. So the screening tool is intended to be used to identify opportunities for those who create policy and manage programs in which whole family approaches will further agency goals and outcomes and can be integrated and made actionable. And some of the areas that we lift up in this assessment include agency culture and infrastructure, parent and family engagement, program design and implementation and evaluation, policy development and implementation, data collection, and use of that data, not just collecting the data, but actually using it to do something with it, and then budgeting. And so that's a little bit about what 2Gen is doing, the work that we're trying to implement. That's just a small scale of the work that's happening. Some of our partners include the Office of Policy, the Office of Early Childhood. We also work with the Commission on Women, Children, Seniors, and Equity, the University of Connecticut, Connecticut Parents, the Office of Workforce Strategies, Department of Social Services, some regional sector partners, and you'll see others. But most importantly, we're also we're working on some regional partnerships with the whole family approach to jobs. So the New England states, the 6 New England states around race, equity, and inclusion, and how we are going to lift that up in our 2Gen work. And then in addition to that, we are also working on a parent engagement learning community. And so that's just a little bit about what's happening. And so, yeah, I'll stop sharing.
All right. Thank you, Christina.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate you, giving us a presentation. I actually learned a lot more about 2Gen and all the work that you guys are doing. So hopefully that was nice, tasteful for everyone. I think Rick had dropped something in the chat. So if you get a chance to respond in the chat, there might be something in there for you as well. But thank you. So next, I think I was supposed to be doing marketing. I know we're a little bit behind. I've been doing a good job kind of managing time. But I'm gonna probably just do a quick little update on show what our new campaign is. Then I'm going to my presentation. All right. Well, I would like to just give a quick update on where we are with our marketing presentation. All right, just better this way. All right, so one of the things that we did for Career Connect, when we first launched Career Connect, we decided to focus on the individual, which is we recognize, BIPOC, youth, reentry, persons with disabilities, veterans, and adults were some of the marginalized population that we wanted to tackle. And keep in mind, this is right on the brink of like COVID and understanding there's systemic challenges and barriers. And how do we remove those barriers and make sure people feel valued within our workforce? So we went ahead and launched Career Connect, which I think everyone is very aware of, which is our $7 million corporate investment into workforce and building our skilled talent in our state. We're reskilling and upskilling and so forth. So a little bit of our elements, we focused on bringing you to the forefront, which kind of mentioned that human-centric, that you approach, making sure these are some of the designs that we kind of built up previously. One of the things that came about it, we recognized, language barriers. So we wanted to make sure we pushed out, social posts in English version and also Spanish version to make sure we're hitting all these many demographics and so forth. And I'm speeding along a little bit, but if anyone's ever interested in having a more comprehensive update with our marketing campaign, I'm more than happy to have some further conversation or scheduling and so forth. And then, so here it is in Spanish, the Spanish version. And here's actually one of our ads that was directly inside of a local corner store. So you kind of actually see it in real life, hitting a lot of our urban cores, a lot of our rural areas, making sure that we're really tapping into those hard to reach populations, which I think we're very successful on. And my colleague that comes in a little bit after me will probably speak to some of the data, some of the impact, and how we've been effective in actually reaching a lot of people that are often overlooked. And so this was their campaign 1, and we've transitioned into what we're calling our 2024 campaign, which is Portraits of Change, really going from that, still focused on that individual, but more so what this Portraits of Success kind of looks like. And so we're still, some of the key objectives continue to still promote some of the work that's being done through OWS Career Connect, and recognizing that residents have access to quality trainings at no cost, which is always a barrier at times. So we've looked at taking away some of the the majority of all barriers when it comes to transportation, childcare, housing, technology, and so forth. And so as you're going to see in a quick, some of the new elements and some of the different design colors and schemes, I'm still finding still stressing that employment is more than just work. It's more about finding fulfillment, finding purpose, and knowing that amazing feeling of accomplishing something great. And we all know what it feels like when you land a perfect opportunity, you land your dream job. And we have some amazing firms in our state, and someone's looking for their dream job, and we want to make sure that we're able to be that catalyst to help them move towards prosperity and landing a dream job. So Portraits of Change kind of transition into, we're able to accomplish that a lot by pushing up a lot of this work through social media posts, through at-home ads, through streaming, through digital, through radio. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll show you what some of the new designs kind of look like. So you may see some that focus on every breakthrough has a beginning. And one of the reasons we're very intentional, even when we have some of the copy and the way it's written, like every breakthrough has a beginning. When you start looking at some of the challenges, even for instance, you see a young Black woman who may identify as a young Black woman. And when you understand some of the historical challenges around how hard it is for them when it comes to data and advancement within the workplace. So it's critical that we have narratives and copies that kind of help them shift that mindset and so forth. So there's a lot of intentionality that went into a lot of this marketing campaign. And then, positive affirmation, like, yes, you can. I think we always need affirmations to know that there's even when it may seem dark or maybe some challenge opportunities, that through Career Connect, there's an opportunity. And by taking that first step, you can actually accomplish your goals. And then obviously around visibility and different ethnicities and demographic groups, it's always critical that you see representation in these fields. Here you go, conquer your career goals. So you see African American male. Then we understand the importance of representation. I think someone mentioned earlier, as you see that, when a person with disabilities, you don't see too many campaigns that are promoting the workforce with individual disabilities or intellectual disabilities. So there's a major opportunity to engage these populations, and that's something that Career Connect has been very at the forefront of doing, is make sure that we're intentional in what we're pushing out. And here's just another one, go all out for your future, just increasing representation. Here's another one. And here you see skilled workers, skilled work that CT needs. It's another intentional. When you see a male nurse, we don't have enough nurses, but we also don't have enough male nurses and male nurses. So here's another opportunity for us to be intentional in how we're driving and creating that funnel. And then all these things will be pushed out through, Facebook. If you have Facebook or IG, you'll see stories and ads. So there's so many different points of engagement. And green jobs on LinkedIn, other opportunities to present that. And then here's another additional LinkedIn post, moving along a little fast. And we've also engaged like Snapchat and TikTok, hopefully TikTok. I don't know how long TikTok will be here, but hopefully still here right now. But we're engaging them for the time being, just to make sure that we're tapping into all audiences that may utilize these platforms. And then out of home means opportunities for us to put up our branding and our elements directly on buses. So you will see some of these on the bus cleaning and also the bus tail, and then some bus shelters. So you'll definitely will see some of these opportunities being rolled out in the winter time. Here's just some additional posters, which are considered billboards. So you'll see some of these billboards eventually going up. And then we're doing a lot of work in newsprint. Here are some of the newsprint that eventually will come online that you'll see, marketing, Career Connect, and all the wonderful opportunities to be trained and upskilled through Career Connect. And then we also have a 30-second video that should be coming out shortly. I probably could give you guys a preview. I know we're running behind, but 30 seconds isn't too long.
Conquer your career with Career Connect. When it comes to your future, the sky's the limit, but it all starts with a first step. So register with Career Connect today. Get connected to training and job opportunities. Eligible applicants can get help with transportation, childcare, housing, and technology. With the right resources to succeed, you're unstoppable. Get started today. Visit ct.gov/careerconnect.
All right. And then thank you. And then one of the last things that we also very focused on was making sure we understand the success stories that are coming through Career Connect. We've had wonderful success stories of people who've, through this opportunity, through this investment in workforce, has transformed their lives, literally transformed their lives and put them on a path to prosperity. And we're interviewing many of our grantees and finding opportunities just to show that this works when there's investment in our workforce and investment in our marginalized populations and all populations and all our residents, and provide access to inclusive and equitable trainings that remove barriers. The opportunities are limitless. Some of our success stories are on our YouTube channel, where all of our meetings are usually captured, so you're able to watch this particular success story, which is from a gentleman who went through a program, and I believe was able to land his first job opportunity and also purchase his first car. So some wonderful opportunities that are transformative that's taking place. So I'll stop there. Hopefully I was able to get that done in 5 minutes. It don't feel like 5 minutes, but hopefully it was 5 minutes. Jonathan, I'll cue you up if you want to jump in. I know we have to have Billy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go quick as well. Let me just pull up my screen here and start sharing away. Okay, great. So can everyone see my screen okay? Good. Okay, great. Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. I want to start by thanking you, Anthony, for inviting me to present today on Career Connect and how we at the Office of Workforce Strategy are understanding the impact we're making in Connecticut. So by way of introduction, my name is Jonathan Richter. I have been a research analyst with the Office of Workforce Strategy for coming up on 2 years now. And I'll be leading this presentation with the understanding that the majority of the guests here know what Career Connect is and or have at least heard about it. But if you'd like to know more about Career Connect, we have a website at ct.gov/careerconnect. And so the website that I just mentioned leads us to our first data point, geographical region. As we and our grantees launch marketing campaigns, we're able to get a general sense of where people in Connecticut are visiting the webpage from. So on this map in particular, we're able to sort of visualize areas of high unemployment using the Department of Labor's most recent research coming out, most recent calculations coming out in April 2024. And so I've overlaid this research with splash page views, so ct.gov/careerconnect. And so the darker bubbles sort of represent the areas of higher unemployment rates, and then also the size of the bubbles are influenced by how many visitors have viewed the website. So in Hartford, it's a dark bubble and also a large bubble. So we're seeing that high unemployment and also more page views along with Waterbury, New Haven, and the Bridgeport area. And so really our main goal with this splash page is to sort of drive our registrations to our common intake portal. And so this is just one way we can really measure the impact of just a simple website with all the information of Career Connect. And we can also apply this geographical research to Career Connect participants that are already in training. And so once a user registers into the Common Intake portal, they take a skills inventory and they are connected to a case manager that are tied directly to their individual interests, including the industry that they want to go into and the skill set that they want to have. So as registrations into the training programs come in, I'm able to monitor if we're still recruiting from these high areas of unemployment. And so this slide is just an analysis I did back in late December 2023. But again, we're still seeing this high impact, and it sort of validates the work that we've been doing alongside our grantees to show that we're still targeting these areas to the best of our ability. Just keeping it going. I want to now dive directly into the participants themselves that have gone through training. And so we see that the majority of our participants, and nearly 2/3 of them, are between the ages of 18 and 34. And so while this younger group might be utilizing Career Connect to either find a new career or find a job even, participants aged 35 to 65 plus can be using Career Connect to either upskill or potentially make a career transition afforded to them. And so even looking further at the gender differences of this population, our office has observed that more males have been enrolling into Career Connect training over females. But however, when we overlay this with portal registrations, we're seeing that more females have signed up on the portal than males. And additionally, as participants go into training, we're seeing that more individuals feel comfortable sharing their gender on the portal rather than they do sharing this information prior to enrolling into training. So this is a phenomenon that I've witnessed firsthand as sort of self-identification, and this is definitely something that the Census Bureau has even analyzed as well. And so this follows through with race and ethnicity data analysis, and we can see that we are doing a good job of enrolling individuals from diverse backgrounds, with the majority of participants self-identifying as BIPOC. As previously mentioned, a large number of individuals just choose not to self-identify their race or ethnicity prior to enrolling in training. And of course, we know this because we have participants register in CT Hires, which is the state's statewide workforce training one-stop shop. And so we want to make sure that participants are still glued into everything that's offered in Connecticut for workforce training, including the federal programs. And so, and also just, I think CT Hires just has the data capacity for this sort of data. And so again, even with Hispanic and Latino self-identification, we're seeing majority of people are not, but still we have some yeses as well, about 23%. And of course, I want to just back up a little bit and look at the overview of who we're actually serving. So we're serving individuals that are not working, but we're also serving this other broad region of participants that are also working as well. So we're making a difference for individuals that are already working either full or part-time, and we're also even engaging individuals that have never worked before. And of course, there's this small sliver of people that have chosen to self-identify as other, so probably like temporary work or something of that sort. And to focus on the individual basis, for individuals that are working or not, Career Connect offers wraparound supports aimed at removing barriers to participation. And so the pie chart on the right is the most up-to-date data on our spending categories to date. And so the largest category thus far is stipends. And so over 2,400 people have taken advantage of supportive services in programming, and additionally supports such as transportation, tools, work gear, and technology have also been requested by participants. And so this leaves an average cost per participant at nearly $1,000, but of course the support structure sort of varies across grantees and training providers as well. I think I did my best of trying to get through this as quickly as possible. So this is my last slide. So for all here, we survived. So, but I'll end it on a high note and say that preliminary data of what I've seen thus far in this short amount of time is showing a 22% increase in wages for participants that have gone through the training and completed and everything like that. So in just this short amount of time, we're doing some incredible work here, and just thought that this is something to celebrate as well. So I wanted to thank everyone, and I'll pass it back to Anthony to wrap this up. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. And yeah, if anyone is ever interested in having some follow-up conversation with Jonathan, I don't want to put his time, but you can always reach out to him. All right, but thank you. Next, I'll pass it over to Billy. I know we're stretched on time, but not everyone loves legislative work. So, all right, Billy, I say the best for last.
Indeed, appreciate it, Anthony, and really awesome job, Jonathan, Christina, everyone, really great presentation so far. So hopefully I'll make it less painful for all of you and, just do some highlights. There is a wall of text here incoming, which I will not go all through this. You can follow up with me on each of these individual bills if you would like, as the presentations will be shared. But there's a couple of programs, particularly from legislation last year, that I just like to highlight in terms of ongoing OWS initiatives. The first of which is our Career Accelerator. This was passed into ledge about 2 years ago, amended last year. And the idea of this is to create a flexible loan program targeted at individuals who do not qualify for traditional either ARPA, WIOA funding, Title IV, or Pell funding. And the idea is to be able to stand this up in short-term training programs in various sectors, of which CDL, commercial driver's licensing, was identified as one. And we're also working to identify several others, including advanced manufacturing and also healthcare. This is something where we are working with social finance, as Christina has mentioned. Social finance is a really wonderful group that provides a lot of advisory work on this. So that's ongoing. We completed a nursing workforce shortage studies with various agencies, and that is part of the OWS healthcare work at large, which I will actually go in to talk a little deeper about. As many of you know, 5001 was a speaker's bill last year, and within that, it charged OWS in Section 11 of developing a human services career pipeline. With that, we had some amendments this year to really make that feasible, where it's really providing a design for that right now, as there was really no fiscal note attached to it. So part of the implementer bill this year essentially updates that and requests that we provide 3 different elements for this, including model design, strategy design, and policy design, for this human services career pipeline. What we're doing right now is we're doing work in collaboration with the Department of Developmental Services, DAS, with Alice Pritchard, among other agencies now, to create an advisory council to drive this work. We're also working with national partners and looking at best practice models in other states, including Massachusetts. We're also working on a strategy to understand how we can outreach and market this especially to individuals in underrepresented communities, also with the caveat that creating this pipeline for direct service professionals, especially entry-level healthcare workers. This is a field that has high turnover, low pay, and so we really need to understand how to mitigate those. And so we're working with other sister agencies, such as the Department of Public Health, to understand what this means in terms of regulations, equitable salary, working conditions, and really what does the inventory of these programs, training programs, and occupations look like. So that's really, top of mind for us in terms of the legislation. There is another piece that relates to human services, and this is something I don't need to touch on quite a bit because Christina has already done a tremendous job of describing it, which is we are actually tasked to work with OEC and 2Gen, along with sister partners at DSS and DOH, to understand how benefit Cliff's pilot can actually be implemented. Again, the Cliff 2 has been out. There's been a lot of forums and discussions about that, but really implement it on the ground, understanding the bundle of state and federal subsidies that need to be tackled with it. I believe Rick had some good suggestions in chat about asset limits and whatnot. So really understanding what the regulations around that are and what the reporting requirements are should a program be built out. So again, we're working with social finance on that as well. Finally, what I like to really just wrap up with is some very important work that OWS is very much adjacent to. And again, Mimi highlighted this earlier, which is the Disconnected Youth Bill, which is 5437. OWS is very much steeped in data work. You'll probably hear Kelly talk a little more about that in the upcoming GWC meeting at large. But really trying to understand now, with the youth work, how this connects to data, as Mimi alluded to earlier. There's a lot of work with P20 Win. There's a lot of structure and data governance around it. So, part of the work of the DEIA subcommittees would be, to see, how we can begin interfacing with some of this. And it overlaps really with both the youth subcommittee and the data subcommittee, which we're working closely with folks like Scott Gull over at the Office of Policy and Management on. So I know there is quite a bit more legislation. I will let you read that at your leisure, and please do follow up if you have any questions or thoughts. Thanks, folks.
All right. Thanks, Billy. That was perfect timing. Perfect. Saved us about a minute. But thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Just to close out, before I transition to Jay or Wes, if everyone wants to say any last words. Part of some of the work that we plan to do, especially with engaging our subcommittees, is to identify some of the North Star to kind of what Billy just kind of mentioned around our human service pipeline, but also some of the disconnected view to make sure we're leveraging our committees to help shape some of that policy, some of those recommendations. So there'll be some meetings that we'll look forward to scheduling some meetings in the future with our Chief Workforce Officer and some other stakeholders, just so we can have those guided conversations, how we can put some resources help build that out, because we have a tremendous opportunity to continue to do some great work. So looking forward to piggybacking off the momentum that we built up today. Jay or Wes, if you guys want to say any closing, if not, then thank you guys for
nothing for me. Thanks for all the work.
All right.
Same here. Thank you all.
All right, thank you.